got a boxer here who's been knocked out. He's not responding. He's totally...
The world of boxing can be very barbaric and can seem loud and chaotic, but there is also a subtle beauty to the science of boxing. It's the slipping of punches, the careful calculation of where your opponent's feet will be. It's the feints to get your opponent to react, exposing his plan of attack while opening him up to yours. Whether you're applying pressure or using your opponent's momentum against him, it's clear that this is an art form, a sweet science. And today we will analyze the science and the secrets. This is part 2 of the dark truth of cutting weight in boxing. Last time on the dark truth of cutting weight in boxing, this fighter suffers from a seizure by over-drinking water. And we will explain exactly why that happened. Hydration. Most people think that hydration is simply drinking water, and that namely an athlete should drink up to a gallon of water daily, depending on how rigorous the training is. But this couldn't be further from the truth, because true hydration isn't just H2O. For example, most of the water sold in plastic bottles, and even the tap water at home, is what I like to call dead water, meaning the pH or potential hydrogen of the water is not alkaline. So what makes water alkaline? Alkalinity is simply minerals and electrolytes. So the only water we should be drinking is spring water, bottled at the source, because water itself is not alkaline. It's not until the water washes over the rock beds, collecting the minerals. These minerals change the molecular structure of the water, making it alkaline. So you see, it's not the amount of water that you drink. It's the amount of minerals and electrolytes you intake. This is true hydration. And there have been many studies that show the overdrinking of water, especially dead water, can flush the sodium and precious minerals from the body, resulting in weakness, seizures, and even death.
Fighter Sheriff Lowell died on Sunday night after collapsing during his professional debut match in the United Kingdom. Lowell was fighting his first major bout at the Harrow Leisure Centre in a suburb northwest of London when the incident occurred, according to match promoter Warren Boxing Management. The company extended its condolences to Lowell's friends and family in a statement posted to social media. Unfortunately, during Sheriff's fight, he collapsed, and despite the best efforts of the paramedics, he was later pronounced dead.
A lot of fans throw around the term weight bully, indicating that bigger fighters compete at lower weight classes to secure an advantage over the opponent. Although I agree, there are fighters that look to seek a size advantage over smaller fighters. Sebastian Fundora, Antonio Margarito, and Paul Williams comes to mind. These are guys that are extremely big for the weight class. But is it the only reason that naturally bigger fighters campaign at lower weights? The fact of the matter is this: boxers are willing to go up and down in weight for the incentive of money and glory. Here's a clip from the anime Ippo, where Takamura, a heavyweight, has to cut down to the middleweight division in order to get a title shot, and where his trainer is apologizing for not getting him a title shot sooner based on the business of boxing. And wanting to campaign at certain weight classes is not just the thoughts of the boxer. It's also pushed by the managers, the promoters, and the sanctioning bodies, weight classes that are carefully orchestrated, filled with talent to make that weight class one of the most illustrious in boxing and where you could make the most money. And the most prominent divisions have always been the heavyweight division, the middleweight division, and the welterweight division. These are boxing's most illustrious weight classes. And some of the best boxers in history have all fought at these weight classes. Sugar Ray Leonard, Tommy Hearns, Roberto Duran, Aaron Pryor, Floyd Mayweather Jr., Manny Pacquiao, Miguel Cotto, Oscar De La Hoya, Bernard Hopkins, Roy Jones Jr., Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, Joe Louis, Joe Frazier, George Foreman. The list goes on and on. But I'm sure you get the picture.
And in this scene we can see that Takamura's power has diminished massively, with him starting to deprive himself of nutrition. Now as we go into starvation mode, our body actually begins to digest our reserves, digesting our internal fat reserves before moving on to digesting our own muscles, which is where we hold our power. The
reasons is that when these guys actually enter into fights, a lot of times they're still dehydrated. They would dehydrate themselves pretty bad in the weigh-ins to get very difficult to rehydrate the brain, apparently. It's not as quick and easy as it is rehydrating the body, and even that takes some time. Most of the deaths in boxing have occurred, most of them, in the lighter weight divisions, or more likely die from fights. And they think it might have something to do with cutting weight.
A good example of a fighter that has been draining himself by staying at a weight class for too long is Devin "The Dream" Haney, who stayed at the 135-pound weight division for too long when his body wanted to expand and move up, mostly due to between fights overeating and overindulging in the food from the depravity of not having that food during his training camps. But by the time he moved up to 140 pounds to face Regis Prograis, it was too late, and it wasn't enough, because Devin Haney has still struggled to make weight. Notice here in this clip how Devin Haney needs help off the ground. He looks lethargic, his eyes are sunken in, and he looks tired and aggravated. This is a telltale sign of a bad weight cut, and he just moved up 5 pounds north.
Kind of final weight push for fight night. Make sure we're on weight. We sweat profusely. A little bit of jogging, some mitt work. Just wrapped up like a burrito, relaxing, breathing deeply, and then we'll check weight and see where we stand after that.
Now, as a doctor, the way that we assess for dehydration is through a clinical examination, looking at the tongue to see if it's dry. You can also see other features such as sunken eyes. So Takamura is now out of saliva. He's just that deplete and dry.
Because I was blistering out of my mouth. I had no spit. It was like, it hurt every day to make that weight. I shook. I was shaking in the bed. Like, shit was crazy.
You'd really be worried about the loss of crucial electrolytes essential for normal body functioning, such as the beating of the heart or the sending of signals down nerve fibers.
Now that we have explained some of the dangers of dehydration due to bad weight cuts in boxing, we're also going to focus on a solution to prevent this from happening in the future. But first, let's listen to some boxing experts. Buddy McGirt, the noted trainer and former 2-division world champion, hit on this point. In a recent conversation with Michael Rosenthal that ran in USA Today, they should have the weigh-ins the day of the fight. Listen, guys don't fight at their normal weight because they know they have 24 hours to put weight on. Make the weigh-ins the day of the fight. Then you would know that you can't really dry out and have an IV and fight 5 to 6 hours later. I think you'd have less injuries. Say you're trying to make 140 pounds, when you should realistically be at 147 pounds. You weigh, say, 143 and think, I can get down to 140 pounds. But you have to dehydrate yourself, and that is not good for the body or the brain. I'm not a doctor, but I'm not an idiot either.
Live the clean lifestyle. Okay, drinking and all that craziness.
No alcohol?
No. Putting on 15, 20 pounds, 30 pounds in between fights. That's not healthy.
So Buddy McGurk's solution would be same-day weigh-ins. But there's one problem with that. There's a reason that same-day weigh-ins was abolished. Because fighters were going into the fight dehydrated severely, and as a result, dying in the ring. So if a fighter is dehydrated the day before the fight, what makes us think it wouldn't be worse on a same-day weigh-in? We would most definitely have more casualties in boxing. Lee Groves, author, writer, and CompuBox punch counter, offered up a more nuanced point of view. As far as returning to same-day weigh-ins, there are pros and cons. On the positive side, one can better control the dramatic rehydrations that now take place. But on the negative side, it would cause some fighters to drain themselves and be given less time to recover from the strain. The very reason today's protocols were adopted a generation ago, while reintroducing same-day weigh-ins could persuade some fighters to think twice about campaigning in a weight class too light for their bodies. Others will choose to roll the dice and reap the benefits of scaling a certain weight for 30 seconds, then fighting at a much higher weight on fight night. In short, if a system can be gamed, it will be gamed. We've covered the dangers of dehydrating the body and also dehydrating the brain, causing a lack of cerebral spinal fluid that cushions any blows or any blunt force trauma, and the lack thereof causes death in the ring. Now let's listen to what some other experts have to say about this ordeal. Writer Paul Magneau dealt with this issue brilliantly in a story that appeared in the Boxing Tribune back in 2013. He stated, "Fighters who routinely compete below their natural weight are playing an ugly game with their insides, putting themselves at risk of serious injury by dehydrating themselves, and then in the day or so between weigh-in and the fight, quickly rehydrating to a much higher weight. The primary danger to the fighter is in the increased vulnerability of the brain, slow to rebuild its jelly-like protective layer due to dehydration." More recently, Magneau made this observation. He stated, "Fighters fighting at artificially low weights may have short-term advantages in strength and power, but weight manipulation drains life from fighters over the long haul. As a fighter ages, the less he has to battle at the scale, the fresher he'll enter the ring."
South African boxer Simiso Buthelezi has passed away just days after being disoriented inside the ring and attempting to punch an invisible opponent. Just seconds, the fighter was rushed to the hospital and put in an induced coma and at King Hospital in Durban, but on Wednesday died after suffering bleeding in the brain.
Here's a clip of Terrence Crawford in an interview with Joe Rogan, where he speaks on the foods that he doesn't eat and how it aids him in the weight cutting process, as well as his overall health.
My back was just hurting so bad, I didn't know what it was, so I went to the hospital, and I had backed up shit all up my back.
What?
Backed up shit. So I cut out the beef because they said beef is harder to digest. So I stopped eating beef, and I ain't never had none of them issues ever again.
So there you have it. Terrence Crawford explains why he doesn't eat pork or beef, stating that he had backed up waste in his gut that traveled to his back, causing severe pain. And this is true. Beef is the hardest meat to digest. Truth is, the hydrochloric acid in our stomach is not hot enough to properly break down such a tough meat. And this is one of the leading causes of colon cancer, because if food is not properly broke down, it's left as putrefied waste in the gut, causing a lack of phytonutrient intake, as well as a myriad of other health issues. But how does this impact a boxer cutting weight? Well, whether you know it or not, most of us walk around every day with 10 to 15 pounds of macro waste in our gut. In other words, we're full of shit. But there is a solution. Even if you choose to still eat beef, and that is a herbal detox or some kind of colon cleanser, which is what Terrence Crawford did before his big fight with Errol Spence. So I want fighters to think about what that implies. If you can eliminate the waste, you can eliminate the weight. Imagine getting rid of 15 pounds or more going into a training camp. Although discipline is still the most important as far as your training regimen is concerned, but I believe struggling to make weight would be a thing of the past if these practices were implemented. Also, I believe another good alternative is fasting. Gervonta Tank Davis fasted his last fight against Frank the Ghost Martin, and you can see the difference in his demeanor and in his countenance. He was hitting backflips at the weigh-in. His energy was just different. He seemed happier, and he spoke with more fluidity. Could fasting impact the weight cutting process in a positive way? Take a look at this.
Keeps you young and helps you burn fat. We also see in men 1,300% increase in testosterone just from somewhere between a 13 to 15 hour fast. And people who have like joints that are hurting, they start doing 15 hours of fasting every day and they're like, God, my joints just don't have that same stiffness in them anymore. But if you stay in that fasted window, you keep going 17 hours, your brilliant body turns within and it goes, wait a second, we better get stronger. So it literally takes the bad cells, the cells that are slowing you down, and it gets rid of those. It literally recycles them out of your system, and it goes into the cells that are still usable, and it makes them stronger. It fixes the intercellular parts. We call that autophagy.
Now that we have covered cleansing the gut and fasting, I would like to get back to hydration. And we talked about spring water, bottled at the source, but the best form of hydration is hands down your fruits and your watery vegetables. This contains something called structured water, or H3O2. This H3O2 is converted into H3O inside of the body. This is the best form of true hydration. And it also has a magnitude measured in a term called angstroms. This is energy. Fruits have been measured up to 12,000 angstroms of energy. In vegetables, your watery vegetables, up to 9,000 angstroms of energy. If you know anything about biochemistry and about the anatomy and about the world itself, you know everything is based upon energy. And as long as energy can flow, we'll stay in a state of homeostasis, or mahat, which simply means balance.
Nutritionist, my chef, he gave me a whole bunch of oranges and melons and grapefruit, big old bowl. You ain't eating no meat, this is what you eat. And the next day I felt better. I was like, oh, all right, we.
Jeanette Zacharias Zapata dies after suffering a brutal injury in the ring. She was only 18. But interesting information came out after the incident. It was said that Jeanette had some struggles with weight, and she had actually been knocked out in Mexico 15 weeks before the fight that ended her life. And if that wasn't enough, there was dialogue pointing to the fact that Jeanette's opponent didn't make weight, giving her an edge in strength and stamina, because she didn't have to deplete herself by making the contracted weight. And she also had a healthy weight advantage over Jeanette as well. I'm a firm believer of if you can make the weight, you're in the weight class. It doesn't matter what you rehydrate up to. No two fighters are the same size. Look at Hearns versus Duran, or look at Tyson versus a lot of guys. Look at Manny Pacquiao versus bigger guys. Fighters will fight where the biggest reward is. Even if that means they're outgrowing the division, big risk, big reward. Because not every fighter or every weight division is warranted the big paydays, but they all put their lives on the line just the same. And as far as struggling to make weight, there are many reasons why fighters struggle with something unnatural like cutting weight in such a short time span.
Heartbreaking story after a young Mexican boxer lost her life due to injuries she suffered in the ring. 18-year-old Jeanette Zacarias Zapata died last Thursday. She was competing in a boxing match in Montreal, Canada on August 28th when she suffered a series of powerful punches. Zapata received medical attention in the ring before being rushed to the hospital. She died 5 days later. Organizers say her husband and trainer was devastated by her death.
And for those that think that guys who cut tremendous amounts of weight and then blow back up 15 or 20 pounds, that it gives them some type of advantage, I would ask you to think again, because you're depleting yourself of your nutrients. You're dehydrating yourself. You're losing electrolytes and minerals. You're losing muscle synthesis. When they put that weight back on, it's just water weight. It's not effective weight because you never get back what you lose in a weight cut. It's impossible in 24 hours to regain all of your electrolytes, all of your nutrition, all of your amino acids, everything you need to perform at optimum performance on the night of the fight. When people use the term weight bully to describe a fighter struggling to lose weight, this is not accurate because there are many reasons a fighter can struggle to make weight. For instance, discipline, overtraining, overeating, lack of sleep due to the pressures of the looming fight, and also just a lack of education on how to truly cut weight. I believe calling these boxers weight bullies belittles the daily sacrifice they make in the sport of boxing, because you play basketball or football, but you don't play boxing. The scary truth is every year 4 to 6 boxers die. There has been 2,000 deaths in the sport of boxing since the 1800s. So with that, understand this. Every boxer knows their peers could die in the ring. They just don't know when or if they're the next to perish in the ring. There are modern-day warriors, and to say that they fear fighting closer to their natural weight is absurd, because you have to be damn near a lunatic to step in the ring knowing it could be your last. There's nothing more noble than putting your life on the line for those that you love. Feeding your family trumps the fear of death. Jeanette Zacarias Zapata lost her life for $1,400. So it's safe to say, the business of boxing is just as brutal as the sport itself. This has been the dark truth of cutting weight in boxing.